Every April, tens of thousands of visitors flock to Essex County Branchbrook Park to view the flowering cherry trees. This area above the Second River and the extension is especially popular. Today, let's consider how the cherry tree collection got to be here. In 1927, Caroline Bamberger Fold, one of the founding members of Bamberger's department store, made the park system an offer. She had seen the lovely Japanese cherry tree collection in the nation's capital and was willing to fund a similar display here in Essex County. At that time, Branchbrook Park was being extended north beyond Heller Parkway. Like Belleville Park and much of Hendricks Field Golf Course, the land along Second River in the extension had belonged to the Hendricks family. Back in 1814, Harmon Hendricks bought the Soho Copper Works, joining other early industrialists who used the Second River to power their factories. Whether released from a mill pond over a water wheel or heated into steam, water from streams like the Second River powered the Industrial Revolution. The Hendricks family later purchased these ruins of another early manufacturer. The remains of the Hinton and Moore Company, operating from 1818 until the 1860s, stood along the Second River into the 1920s when this became parkland. The renowned Olmsted firm was again asked to design the landscape for this new section of the park. They incorporated the popular ornamental cherry tree into their planting plans. With the sloping banks of the Second River as their canvas, they planned a background of dark green evergreens to contrast with the pale pink and white blossoms. It would take years until their blueprints became the living masterpiece they envisioned. Mrs. Fold's offer to fund the purchase of 2,000 ornamental cherry trees was readily accepted. The first of the decorative trees were planted in the extension near the tennis courts in 1928. Over the next several years, much construction took place along the river, including flood prevention walls. The Olmsted plan involved moving Mill Street into the valley closer to the river. The WPA was involved in building bridges at different levels so that cars, trains, and people could move without obstruction. As land along the Second River was prepared for landscaping, the rest of Mrs. Fold's gift was installed in the park. The landscape would mature another decade until the blossoming cherry trees presented a notable display. From then on, the spring blooms have drawn crowds every year.
I was looking at old photos of the park a few days ago, and I saw how when the park first opened, many parts of it were so empty and barren, how they planted these little tiny trees. And I thought about how Olmsted came up with this vision of the park that would only come to its full, literally flowering fruition a few decades later. And I think about that kind of foresight and that kind of vision, and I'm thankful that people 100 years ago drew up this park and thought about what New York would look like a century later, the need for a park like this a century later. And I'm thankful for their vision in doing that, and I'm really thankful for the county's efforts to add more trees, to replant the park, and to ensure that this vision will be accessible to people 100 years from now, to my children and my children's children.